My name is Hugo, 65 years old, and I always dreamed this day would be perfect. My only son, Adam, was getting married, and despite my reservations about Jessica, I put on my best suit and brightest smile. I never imagined his bride would look me straight in the eyes during their reception and say those words that still echo in my mind: "Get out of here and never come back." My response was simple but effective. I smiled and said, "Okay, but I will take some others with me." Where are you watching from today? Before I continue this wedding disaster story, hit that like button and subscribe, because trust me, you will want to see what happened when she realized exactly who left with me that day. Life has a funny way of testing you when you least expect it. After my wife Maria passed away from cancer when Adam was just 10 years old, it was just the two of us against the world. Those early years were tough. I would work all day at the construction company I managed, rush home to make dinner, help with homework, and then stay up late handling bills and household chores. There were nights I would collapse into bed exhausted, wondering if I was doing enough for my boy. But Adam and I developed a bond that was unbreakable, or so I thought. Adam was always a bright kid. Even during the darkest days after losing his mother, he maintained good grades and stayed focused on his goals. I remember driving him to science competitions on weekends and watching proudly as he collected ribbons and trophies. By the time he graduated high school as valedictorian, I felt like the luckiest father alive. Against all odds, we had made it through the hardest years together. College was expensive, but I had been saving since Adam was born. I took extra jobs when needed, skipped vacations, and drove the same old truck for 15 years to ensure Adam could attend the university of his choice without debt. When he graduated with honors in engineering, I sat in that audience bawling like a baby. Maria would have been so proud. Adam landed a job at an innovative tech startup right out of college. He was designing sustainable energy solutions, making good money, and loving every minute of it. We would have dinner every Sunday, and he would explain his latest projects with such passion that even though I barely understood the technical details, his enthusiasm was contagious. Then came Jessica. Adam mentioned he had met someone at a charity gala his company had sponsored. She worked in public relations for a major corporation and was, according to Adam, brilliant and beautiful. I was thrilled for him and looked forward to meeting this woman who had put such a sparkle in my son's eyes. Our first meeting was at an upscale restaurant downtown that made me feel immediately underdressed in my best button-down shirt and slacks. Jessica arrived 20 minutes late without apology. Dressed impeccably in designer clothes I could tell cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. She was beautiful, yes, with perfect blonde hair, manicured nails, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Throughout dinner, Jessica dominated the conversation, talking about her connections to local celebrities, her expensive tastes, and her career aspirations. When I tried to share stories about Adam as a child, she would politely smile, then smoothly change the subject. Adam seemed different around her too, laughing a bit too loudly at her jokes and nervously checking her expression before he spoke. Red flags were waving, but I told myself I was being overprotective. Adam was a grown man capable of making his own decisions. Still, I noticed small changes in the following months. Our Sunday dinners became less frequent. Adam started missing our fantasy football draft for the first time in 8 years. He changed his clothing style, bought an expensive car he could barely afford, and began dropping names of influential people he was meeting through Jessica. His old friends noticed it too. Thomas, who had been Adam's best friend since middle school, called me one day concerned that Adam had canceled their annual fishing trip with a vague excuse about Jessica having planned something else that weekend. When I asked Adam about it, he became defensive, saying Jessica was helping him make important connections for his career. 6 months after they started dating, Adam announced they were engaged. The ring was enormous, and I wondered how he could afford it on his salary. When I expressed surprise at the speed of their relationship, Adam assured me Jessica was the one. I toasted their happiness and told myself it would be okay. Then the wedding planning began, and Jessica took control. She hired an exclusive wedding planner and arranged for the ceremony to be held at the most expensive venue in the city. When I offered to contribute financially or help with preparations, Jessica politely declined, saying her parents would cover everything. I learned they owned a chain of luxury hotels and were providing an unlimited budget for their only daughter's big day. I tried to stay involved, suggesting traditional elements that had been in our family for generations. Perhaps Adam could wear the cufflinks my father had given me on my wedding day. Or maybe we could incorporate Maria's favorite flowers into the arrangements as a way to include her memory. Jessica vetoed each idea, claiming it did not fit her vision for a modern, sophisticated wedding. The pre-wedding events were increasingly uncomfortable. At the engagement party hosted by Jessica's parents, I found myself seated at a table far from Adam, with people I did not know. When I approached Adam to congratulate him again, Jessica quickly appeared at his side, steering him toward some important business associates of her father. As the months passed, I watched my son drift further away. He quit his job at the startup, accepting a position at Jessica's father's hotel corporation instead. When I expressed surprise, given his passion for sustainable engineering, he explained that this was a better career move with more financial security. The light of excitement I used to see when he talked about his work was notably absent. Despite all this, I remained determined to support my son. If Jessica made him happy, then I would make every effort to embrace her as family. I kept my concerns to myself, focused on the positive, and looked forward to the wedding day with cautious optimism. Adam was my only child, the center of my world since the day he was born. His happiness was worth swallowing my pride and accepting that our relationship would change. I just never imagined how drastically that change would come. The morning of the wedding, I woke before sunrise. Sleep had evaded me most of the night, as memories of Maria flooded my mind. How I wished she could be here to see our son marry. I found myself talking to her as I put on the new suit I had purchased for the occasion, a deep navy blue that the salesperson assured me was appropriate for a father of the groom. In the quiet morning hours, I carefully packed a small gift for Adam, a watch that had belonged to my father. 3 generations of memories encased in polished silver. I had written a heartfelt card expressing my pride and love for the man he had become. These moments, these traditions, seemed more important than ever now. I arrived at the hotel venue 2 hours early, hoping to help with any last-minute preparations. The lobby was already buzzing with activity, as florists, photographers, and catering staff rushed about. When I introduced myself as the father of the groom to a harried-looking woman with a clipboard, she barely glanced up before directing me to sit in the lounge until the wedding planner could address me. An hour passed before Vivian, Jessica's wedding planner, approached me with an artificial smile. Her clipboard appeared to be an extension of her arm as she informed me that everything was under control and my assistance would not be necessary. When I asked to see Adam, she explained he was busy with groomsmen photos and suggested I use this time to mingle with arriving guests instead. Rather than cause any friction, I nodded and retreated to watch the venue transform. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above elaborate floral arrangements that must have cost thousands. Ice sculptures, champagne fountains, and a string quartet created an atmosphere of extravagance that felt foreign to me. This was not the kind of celebration Adam and I had ever discussed during our hypothetical wedding talks over the years. Finally, I caught a glimpse of my son in a secluded area of the garden. He was alone for a moment, adjusting his bow tie with shaking hands. When our eyes met, his face brightened momentarily before clouding with what looked like anxiety. I approached cautiously, noting how handsome he looked in his tuxedo, so much like his mother around the eyes. "Adam, you look incredible, son," I said, straightening his already perfect tie. "Are you excited?" He nodded too quickly. "Sure, Dad. Just nervous, I guess. Everything has to be perfect today. Jessica has been planning this her whole life." I placed my hands on his shoulders, feeling the tension there. "Perfect is overrated, Adam. The best days of our lives are usually the ones with a few unexpected moments. Remember your 8th birthday when the clown showed up drunk?" A genuine laugh escaped him then, the first I had heard in months. His shoulders relaxed slightly under my touch. "Yeah, that was a disaster that turned into one of my favorite memories." Our moment was interrupted by a sharp voice calling Adam's name. Jessica's mother, Margaret, approached with purpose in her designer heels. She was a taller, older version of Jessica, with the same cold eyes that assessed me quickly. "There you are, Adam dear. Jessica is asking for you." Something about the first look photos needing to be redone. She did not acknowledge me directly, merely waiting for Adam to follow her. Adam shot me an apologetic look. "I have to go, Dad. I'll see you at the ceremony." As he walked away, Margaret finally turned to me. "So, you're Hugo. Jessica has told us so much about you." Her tone suggested none of what she had heard was particularly impressive. "All good things, I hope," I replied with forced cheer. She offered a tight smile. "We are just so thrilled Adam will be joining the family business. Such a smart decision on his part." "Yes, though I admit I was surprised. He was doing such innovative work at his previous company." Margaret's eyebrow rose slightly. "Well, passion projects are lovely for the young, but real security comes from established business. Our company can provide opportunities Adam could never have otherwise." Her implication that I had somehow failed to provide adequately for my son stung sharply. As other guests began arriving, I made my way to the ceremony space to find my seat. To my surprise, I was not in the front row as tradition would dictate for the father of the groom. Instead, my place card was in the third row, behind numerous members of Jessica's extended family. When I discreetly asked an usher about this, he mumbled something about seating chart changes and space constraints. While waiting, I overheard snippets of conversation from Jessica's relatives nearby. Their whispered judgments about the simplicity of the few family members I had invited made my ears burn with embarrassment and anger. My brother Frank and his wife, a few cousins, and a handful of family friends made up my entire side. Most were dressed well, but clearly not in the designer labels that adorned Jessica's guests. Just before the ceremony began, I noticed Thomas slipping into a seat near the back. Adam's childhood best friend looked uncomfortable in his suit, glancing around with a bewildered expression. I excused myself and went to greet him. "Thomas, I am so glad you made it," I said, genuinely pleased to see a familiar, friendly face. He gave me an awkward hug. "Thanks, Hugo. I almost did not come after everything, but I wanted to support Adam." "What do you mean, after everything?" Thomas looked surprised. "You do not know? I was supposed to be the best man. Been planning it for years. Even had the speech written. Then 3 weeks ago, Adam called to say Jessica thought it would be better if her brother served as best man instead. Adam said I could still be a groomsman, but then last week, that invitation was rescinded too. Something about keeping the wedding party balanced." My heart sank. This explained why none of the groomsmen I had seen earlier were familiar to me. They must all be Jessica's choices, connections from her social circle rather than Adam's true friends. As I made my way back to my assigned seat, I noticed other significant people from Adam's life scattered in the back rows. His former college professor who had mentored him through his thesis, his high school basketball coach, who had been like a second father during those difficult teenage years after Maria died, his cousins on my side, who had grown up with him like siblings, all relegated to the periphery while Jessica's social network took center stage. The string quartet began to play, signaling the start of the ceremony. I straightened in my seat and prepared to watch my only son get married, trying desperately to ignore the growing knot of dread in my stomach. The wedding ceremony itself was undeniably beautiful, but felt like watching a theatrical production rather than a meaningful life event. The officiant, a distinguished-looking man I had never met, spoke of love and commitment in generic terms without any personal anecdotes about the couple. I kept waiting for some mention of Adam and Jessica's journey together, their shared dreams, or unique connection, but the script could have applied to any wealthy couple in America. When they exchanged vows, Jessica went first, her words perfectly rehearsed and delivered with the polish of a professional public speaker. She spoke of building an empire together and standing beside Adam as they conquered the business world and social scene. Not once did she mention children, growing old together, or supporting each other through life's inevitable challenges. Adam's vows seemed different from what I knew of my son. He promised to work tirelessly to provide the lifestyle Jessica deserved, to never embarrass her in front of colleagues, and to put their social advancement above all else. As he spoke, his eyes frequently darted to Jessica's face as if seeking approval. Where was the compassionate, idealistic young man who once told me he wanted a partner who would help him make the world better? After the ceremony came the cocktail hour in the hotel's lavish courtyard. I tried to mingle, introducing myself to people as Adam's father, but conversations quickly fizzled when guests realized I had no valuable business connections to offer. Several times, I caught Jessica's parents watching me with thinly veiled disapproval, especially when I became animated, telling a story about Adam's childhood science experiments to a couple who had actually seemed interested. When the time came to enter the ballroom for dinner, I discovered my seating assignment was at the very back of the room, so far from the head table that I would need binoculars to see my son clearly. My table companions were distant acquaintances of Jessica's family, none of whom knew Adam personally. The message was clear. I was being intentionally distanced from my son on what should have been one of the most important days of our shared lives. Still, I was determined to stay positive. During a brief lull in the tightly choreographed reception timeline, I made my way to the head table to congratulate the newly married couple. Jessica was deep in conversation with her maid of honor but turned when Adam called my name. "Dad, you made it," he said, as if there had been any doubt I would attend my only son's wedding. I embraced him warmly. "Of course I did, son. The ceremony was beautiful. Congratulations to you both." When I turned to include Jessica in the congratulations, her smile was already fixed in place, the kind reserved for photographers and unwelcome relatives. "Thank you for coming, Hugo. Your suit looks nice. Did you find your table all right?" "Yes, though it is quite far back. I had hoped we might have a moment to talk today, Adam. I have something for you." I patted my jacket pocket where the watch and card waited. Before Adam could respond, Jessica placed her hand possessively on his arm. "Adam, darling, we need to greet the Robertsons. They flew in from Paris just for us." Her eyes flicked dismissively over me. "Perhaps you can catch up with your father after the honeymoon." Adam looked torn, glancing between us. "Maybe later, Dad? We have the whole reception timeline to follow right now." I nodded, swallowing my disappointment. "Of course. Go be with your guests. I will be here all night." As they moved away, I overheard Jessica murmuring to Adam, "You need to get your father under control. He was telling the Murphys about your science fair projects like you are still 12 years old. Those are potential investors in your father-in-law's hotel expansion." Adam cast an apologetic glance back at me but did not contradict her. I retreated to a quiet corner of the ballroom, nursing a whiskey and watching the celebration unfold from a distance. The pain of being so deliberately excluded from my son's life hit me harder than I expected. I had lost Maria too early, and now it seemed I was losing Adam too. Not to death, but to a woman who saw me as an embarrassment rather than family. After finishing my drink, I decided to seek out familiar faces. I found Thomas at the bar, looking as out of place as I felt. He was on his third beer and did not hide his bitterness when I approached. "Some wedding, huh?" he said, signaling the bartender for another drink. 15 years of friendship, and I am seated by the kitchen doors with people who keep asking if I work for the hotel. "I am sorry, Thomas. I had no idea about the best man situation until today." He shrugged, but the hurt in his eyes was evident. "It's not your fault, Hugo. It's been coming for months. Ever since Jessica entered the picture, Adam has been dropping friends like we have some contagious disease. Do you know he did not even invite Sam and Diego? They were his roommates for 4 years in college." This new information stunned me. Sam and Diego had been constants in Adam's life, supporting him through challenging engineering courses and celebrating his successes. They had spent numerous holidays at our house when they could not travel home to their own families. As the evening progressed, I sought out other familiar faces from Adam's past, each conversation more disheartening than the last. Adam's former mentor, Professor Williams, told me Adam had stopped responding to his emails after Jessica suggested the professor's research was too controversial for someone seeking advancement in corporate circles. Coach Patterson, who had spent countless unpaid hours helping Adam develop confidence through basketball after Maria died, confided that he had only received an invitation after directly asking Adam if he was welcome. Even then, he had been seated in the furthest corner of the ballroom. Most distressing was my conversation with Judith, our former neighbor who had helped care for Adam when he was sick and I had to work. She had been like a grandmother to him, baking his favorite cookies and attending every school performance. Now, in her 80s, she had made the effort to attend despite her arthritis, only to be placed at a table near the restrooms, far from any action. "I think they are ashamed of us, Hugo," Judith said quietly, her aged hands trembling slightly around her water glass. "We do not fit the image Jessica wants to project. We are not wealthy or connected or impressive on paper. We are just people who loved Adam when he had nothing to offer but himself." Her words struck me profoundly because they articulated exactly what I had been feeling all day. Jessica valued status, connections, and appearances. The authentic relationships that had sustained Adam throughout his life were now inconvenient reminders of a past she wanted to erase. As dinner concluded and the dancing began, I made one last attempt to connect with my son. I approached as he stood momentarily alone near the cake table, Jessica having been whisked away for photos with her bridesmaids. "Adam, could we step outside for just a minute?" I asked. "I would really like to give you your gift before the night gets any later." He checked his watch nervously. "I do not know, Dad. Jessica has this whole evening planned down to the minute. The cake cutting is in 15 minutes, and then we have the specialized choreographed first dance. Son, I have waited all day. I am just asking for 5 minutes." The conflict was evident on his face, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of my real son beneath the polished exterior Jessica had created. He nodded quickly. "Okay, just a quick minute outside on the terrace." My heart lifted slightly as we moved toward the doors. Maybe there was still hope for our relationship after all. But as we approached the terrace doors, Jessica appeared as if summoned by some sixth sense that her plans were being disrupted. "Adam, what are you doing?" "The cake cutting is being set up. Just stepping out with my dad for 5 minutes," he explained. "I will be right back." Jessica's pleasant mask slipped momentarily before she caught herself, aware of nearby guests. Her voice remained controlled but took on a steely edge I had heard hints of throughout the day. This was the moment everything would come to a head, and somehow I knew our relationship with Adam hung in the balance. Jessica's eyes narrowed as she looked between Adam and me, the calculation in her gaze unmistakable. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to maintain the appearance of a private family conversation, though her tone carried an unmistakable edge. "Adam, sweetie, we have 200 guests waiting for us. The photographer has a specific timeline, and we are paying him by the hour." She placed her manicured hand on his arm, squeezing slightly. "Your father has had all day to talk to you. Surely whatever he needs can wait until after the honeymoon." I maintained my composure, aware we were still in public view. I was just hoping to give Adam his gift privately. "It will only take 5 minutes." Jessica turned to me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Hugo, I understand you want to be involved, but today is about our new beginning as a couple. Every minute of this reception has been carefully planned. Perhaps you could mail the gift to our new home." The dismissiveness of her suggestion made my chest tighten, but I remained calm. "This is a family heirloom, Jessica. It's a tradition in our family to pass it down in person." Adam shifted uncomfortably between us, his eyes darting to nearby guests who were beginning to notice our tense exchange. "Maybe we could step aside for just 2 minutes, Jess? Then I will be right back for the cake." Her pleasant expression faltered for a split second. 2 nearby members of Jessica's family had stopped their conversation to observe us, and Jessica immediately recalibrated her approach. Her voice became louder, performatively warm for their benefit. "Of course, family traditions are important. We just need to be mindful of our guests and our schedule." She linked her arm through Adam's possessively. "Why do not we include your father in the cake-cutting photos? Would that work as a compromise?" It was not a compromise at all, merely another way to control the situation while appearing generous to onlookers. I could feel my patience wearing thin after a full day of being sidelined, but I was determined not to create a scene at my son's wedding. "Adam, Could I please have just a moment alone with you? It's important to me. Jessica's composure slipped further as a photographer approached, signaling it was time for the cake cutting. Her voice took on a harder edge, though she maintained her smile for appearances. Adam needs to be with me right now. The cake cutting is a pivotal moment. I tried one more time, speaking directly to my son. Adam, all day I have respected Jessica's plans and stayed in the background. I am just asking for 5 minutes of your time. The internal conflict was visible on Adam's face as he stood frozen between his new wife and his father. Finally, he spoke in a quiet, strained voice. Dad, can we do this tomorrow maybe? Or after we get back? I just do not want to disrupt anything right now. His words cut deep, confirming what I had feared all day. My son was choosing to prioritize appearances and his new wife's demands over our relationship, even in this small request. Jessica sensed her victory immediately, her grip on Adam's arm relaxing as she turned toward the photographer. What Jessica did not anticipate was that I would continue speaking, not to cause a scene, but because I could not bear to let this moment pass without expressing my concern for my only child. Adam, I am worried about you. In the past year, you have changed careers, distanced yourself from lifelong friends, and seem to be molding yourself into someone I barely recognize. All I want is for you to be truly happy. Jessica spun back around, her facade cracking under the weight of my gentle but direct words. The photographer, sensing tension, discreetly stepped away. Without his presence, Jessica dropped all pretense of civility. Her voice lowered to a harsh whisper. How dare you try to ruin this day with your little father-knows-best routine? Adam is finally moving up in the world, away from your blue-collar mindset and embarrassing stories. She looked me up and down with undisguised contempt. Do you have any idea how uncomfortable it makes everyone when you ramble on about science projects and basketball games? It's pathetic. Adam paled at her words but remained silent, seemingly paralyzed by the conflict unfolding before him. I maintained my calm, refusing to match her anger. Jessica, I have only ever wanted what's best for my son. If that's a life with you, then I accept that. But isolating him from people who care about him is not love. It's control. A flash of fury crossed her face. You know nothing about our relationship. Adam is happy with the choices we have made together. Choices that will secure our future, not leave him struggling like you, living in the same tired house for 30 years. She straightened her designer dress with trembling hands. You could at least have had the decency to blend in today, instead of reminding everyone of Adam's humble origins. By now, several nearby guests had fallen silent, watching our exchange with uncomfortable fascination. Jessica noticed their attention and seemed to realize she had revealed too much of her true feelings publicly. Rather than backtracking, however, she doubled down, raising her voice just enough to make her next words unmistakable to those around us. Get out of here and do not come back. You are not welcome here. The nearby conversation stopped entirely. A server carrying champagne paused mid-stride. In that moment of shocked silence, all eyes turned to us, waiting for my response to this public humiliation. I looked at my son, searching his face for any sign that he would defend me, would reject the cruel dismissal his new wife had just delivered. But Adam stood frozen, his expression a mixture of shame and conflict, unwilling or unable to stand up to Jessica even in this moment. The realization that I had lost him, at least for now, settled over me with a profound sadness. But rather than create a further scene or slink away in embarrassment, I made a decision in that moment that would change everything. I smiled calmly at Jessica, then at my son, and spoke in a clear, steady voice that carried to those watching. Okay, but I will take some others with me. Jessica's momentary confusion was quickly replaced by dismissive relief. Her tight smile returned as she clearly believed she had won, that I would simply leave and take my embarrassing presence with me. She turned away, already reaching for Adam to lead him to the cake table, clearly considering the matter settled. What she did not understand, what she could not have predicted, was exactly who would be leaving with me, and what that would reveal about the true nature of the community she had worked so hard to exclude from this celebration. I walked away with dignity, catching the sympathetic gazes of several guests who had witnessed the exchange. As I moved through the reception, I had decisions to make and people to speak with. The evening was far from over, and Jessica would soon discover the true cost of her actions. I moved through the reception with deliberate calm, no longer concerned with fitting into Jessica's carefully orchestrated event. My mind was clear now, my purpose defined. This was not about revenge or creating drama. It was about standing up for authentic relationships and showing my son what he was sacrificing for the sake of status and appearances. My first stop was Thomas's table near the back. He was nursing his 5th beer, looking miserable and out of place. When I approached, he straightened, instantly reading something in my expression. "What happened?" he asked. "You look like a man on a mission." I sat beside him and quietly recounted the confrontation with Jessica, not embellishing or exaggerating, simply stating the facts. When I finished, Thomas's face had hardened with resolve. "She actually told you to get out and never come back? At your own son's wedding?" His hands tightened around his glass. "I have been biting my tongue for months, watching how she treats you and changes Adam. I am done pretending this is okay. I am leaving, Thomas," I said simply, "and I wanted to let you know before I go. You have been like a second son to me all these years." Thomas did not hesitate. "I am coming with you, Hugo." He stood, placing his napkin on the table. "I came today hoping to see some sign that the Adam I knew was still in there somewhere. But if he will stand there while Jessica talks to you that way, then I do not recognize him anymore." I was touched by his loyalty but needed to be clear. "I am not asking you to leave, Thomas. This is between me and Adam. You are not asking, I am choosing," he replied firmly. "Adam may have forgotten who his real friends are, but I have not forgotten who was there for me when my dad left and my mom was working 3 jobs. You gave me rides to school, fed me dinner 3 nights a week, and never made me feel like a charity case. That matters more than any wedding reception." Together, we moved to the next table where my brother Frank and his wife Elaine sat with our cousins. Frank took one look at my face and stood immediately, concern etching his features. "What has happened, Hugo?" Again I recounted the confrontation without dramatization. Frank's expression darkened with each word. By the time I finished, Elaine had tears in her eyes, and my cousins looked stunned. "That is it," Frank declared. "We are leaving. No one talks to my brother that way. Not in front of me, not in front of our family." I placed a hand on his arm. "I do not want to create a bigger scene, Frank. This is Adam's wedding, regardless of how Jessica is behaving." "Hugo," Elaine said gently, "you have stood by Adam through everything. You sacrificed your own dreams to give him opportunities. You deserve basic respect, especially today." She gathered her purse and stood. "If Jessica cannot see that, and Adam will not defend it, then perhaps they need to see what it means when people of character walk away." My cousins nodded in agreement, already collecting their belongings. Together, our small family group began moving toward the exit, drawing curious glances from nearby tables. Next, I approached Coach Patterson, who was seated with his wife near the restrooms. The man who had mentored Adam through his difficult teenage years listened intently as I explained what had transpired. His weathered face registered first shock, then profound disappointment. "That boy has forgotten who he is," the coach said with a shake of his head. "I watched him grow from a heartbroken kid into a young man with integrity, or so I thought." He clapped me on the shoulder. "We are with you, Hugo. Some things matter more than fancy parties and business connections." As we moved through the ballroom, our group growing larger, I spotted Professor Williams and made my way to his table. The distinguished academic had been instrumental in guiding Adam's education and early career. When he heard my account, he removed his glasses and cleaned them thoughtfully. "You know, I have seen this pattern before with promising young graduates," he said sadly. "They get seduced by wealth and status, only to realize too late what they have sacrificed." He stood, straightening his tie. "I had hoped Adam would be different. Perhaps this will be the wake-up call he needs." With each conversation, our exodus grew. Adam's college roommates, who had been relegated to a table near the kitchen, joined without hesitation. Several of Adam's former colleagues from the startup company, people who had shared his passion for sustainable engineering, stood in solidarity. Most moving was Judith, our elderly former neighbor, who rose shakily from her chair but with fire in her eyes. "I may be old, Hugo," she said firmly, taking my arm for support, "but I still know the difference between real love and a gold-plated cage. That girl does not love who Adam is. She loves who she can mold him to be, and I am too old to waste time pretending otherwise." As our group made its way toward the exit, I was careful not to be disruptive. We moved quietly, with dignity, not causing a scene or announcing our departure. Yet the visual impact of 20 people walking out together was impossible to miss. Heads turned, whispers spread. Jessica's carefully constructed image of social perfection began to crumble as guests noticed the pattern of departures. Near the door, I paused to speak with the wedding coordinator, explaining that we were leaving but wished no disruption to the event. Her professional mask slipped just enough to reveal sympathy in her eyes as she nodded understanding. Just before stepping through the doorway, I turned for one last look at my son. Adam stood near the cake table, Jessica whispering urgently in his ear as she gestured toward our departing group. Even from a distance, I could see confusion and alarm dawning on his face as he recognized exactly who was leaving. People who had been constants throughout his life, pillars of support and authentic connection. For a brief moment, our eyes met across the crowded room. In that instant, I saw a flash of recognition in my son's gaze, perhaps the first real awareness of what he was losing. I did not gesture or call out. I simply held his gaze for a heartbeat, then turned and walked out with the people who truly knew him, loved him, and had helped shape the man I had raised him to be. In the hotel lobby, our impromptu group paused, processing what had just occurred. There were no recriminations or dramatic speeches, just a shared understanding that some principles matter more than social niceties, and that true family, whether by blood or choice, stands together when it counts. Thomas voiced what many were thinking. "So, what now?" I considered for a moment, then smiled wearily. "I think I could use some real company and honest conversation. My house is open to anyone who wants to continue this evening with people who actually care about each other. No fancy champagne, but I make a decent cup of coffee, and I believe I have some beers in the fridge." The genuine warmth of agreement that followed confirmed I had made the right decision. As we departed the elaborate hotel venue, leaving behind Jessica's curated world of appearances, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The evening had not gone as planned, but perhaps it had gone exactly as needed. My living room had never held so many people at once. By 9 o'clock that evening, nearly 20 guests filled my modest home, jackets discarded, ties loosened, fancy shoes kicked off by the door. The contrast between Jessica's meticulously orchestrated reception and this spontaneous gathering could not have been more striking. Yet the warmth and authenticity in the room were palpable. Thomas had stopped at a grocery store on the way, returning with beer, wine, and snacks. Coach Patterson's wife had insisted on ordering several pizzas. Professor Williams had brought a bottle of fine scotch he had been saving for a special occasion, declaring that standing up for genuine relationships qualified as special indeed. As people settled into comfortable conversation, the initial tension of the wedding confrontation gradually dissolved. No one was checking phones for social media opportunities or networking with hidden agendas. These were people connected by something real, their shared history with Adam, and genuine concern for his future. Thomas, slightly buzzed but articulate, began sharing stories from his and Adam's childhood adventures. "Do you remember when Adam decided he could build a working hovercraft for the science fair, Hugo?" he asked, laughing. "We flooded your garage trying to test that thing, and you two thought you could clean it up before I got home from work," I recalled, smiling at the memory. "But you used dish soap in the wet vac and created a bubble disaster that was twice as bad." The stories flowed naturally, painting a picture of the Adam we had all known and loved. The brilliant, kind-hearted, sometimes stubborn young man who had been passionate about making a difference in the world. Coach Patterson recounted how Adam had tutored struggling teammates in math without making them feel inferior. Judith reminisced about Adam shoveling her driveway every snowfall without being asked, even as a young teenager shouldering grief. As these stories filled my home, a fuller truth emerged about the changes we had all observed in Adam since Jessica entered his life. It started small, Thomas explained, swirling his beer thoughtfully. First, he canceled plans last minute because Jessica had surprised him with concert tickets or dinner reservations. You could not even be mad because he seemed so happy, right? But then it escalated. He started criticizing things he used to love, using phrases that sounded nothing like him, calling our annual camping trips juvenile, saying his work at the startup was naive idealism. That matches what I observed, Professor Williams added, leaning forward in his chair. Adam's research proposals were innovative, connecting renewable energy solutions with practical applications for developing communities. Then suddenly he was dismissing that work as lacking commercial viability. His language changed literally overnight, adopting corporate jargon and prioritizing profit margins over impact. My brother Frank, who had remained relatively quiet, finally spoke up. How did none of us see this coming? How did we let it get this far? I think we all saw it, I admitted. We just hoped Adam would recognize it himself before it was too late. I believed he needed to make his own choices, even if they were mistakes. The conversation might have continued along these reflective lines indefinitely, but it was interrupted by the simultaneous chiming of multiple phones throughout the room. People reached for their devices, expressions of surprise spreading across faces. "Oh my God," Thomas exclaimed, staring at his screen. "Jessica is having a complete meltdown at the reception. My buddy Jason is still there and just texted me. Apparently, she noticed our mass exodus and lost it when she realized who exactly had left." More phones buzzed as social media began lighting up with discreet references to drama at the Gordon Miller wedding. No one was posting explicit details, maintaining at least that level of decorum. But the subtext was clear in comments about unexpected departures and tense conversations. I felt a pang of regret that Adam was dealing with public embarrassment on what should have been a joyous day, regardless of the circumstances. But I also recognized that sometimes a moment of uncomfortable truth was necessary for genuine growth. My own phone, which I had silenced earlier, now showed multiple missed calls and messages. Most were from wedding guests expressing concern or solidarity. But the most recent was a text from Adam himself. "Dad, where is everyone? What happened?" The simple question revealed volumes. Adam had finally noticed the absence of the people who had formed his support system throughout his life. Whether that realization would lead to greater awareness remained to be seen. I chose not to respond immediately, needing time to formulate a thoughtful answer rather than one driven by the swirling emotions of the day. Instead, I returned my attention to the people gathered in my home, people who had chosen authentic connection over social appearance. As the evening progressed, my phone rang again. Jessica's name appeared on the screen. I declined the call, unwilling to engage in what would undoubtedly be an unproductive confrontation. Moments later, a voicemail notification appeared. Thomas noticed my expression. "Jessica?" I nodded. "I will listen to it later. Tonight is about being with people who value real relationships." The party continued well past midnight, evolving from processing the wedding events to genuinely enjoying each other's company. People exchanged contact information, made plans for future gatherings, and forged new connections. What had begun as an act of solidarity had transformed into a celebration of community and authentic relationship. The following morning, I awoke to the sounds of activity in my kitchen. Several guests had stayed over, unwilling to drive after drinking. Thomas and Coach Patterson were preparing breakfast, the smell of coffee and bacon filling the house. It felt right somehow, this impromptu family of choice sharing morning conversation around my table. The peaceful atmosphere was interrupted by a sharp knock at the front door. When I opened it, Adam stood on the porch, still wearing his rumpled tuxedo shirt and pants from the night before. His eyes were bloodshot, his expression a mixture of anger and confusion. "What the hell happened last night, Dad?" he demanded, stepping past me into the house without waiting for an invitation. "Jessica is devastated. Half our important guests left early after seeing your little parade out the door. Her parents are furious. Before I could respond, Adam noticed the people gathered in the kitchen doorway, watching our exchange with concern. His eyes widened as he took in the faces of his former mentor, coach, childhood friend, and elderly neighbor. What is this? Some kind of anti-wedding after-party? His voice rose with indignation. Did you all plan this? To embarrass me and Jessica on our wedding day? Thomas stepped forward, his expression serious. No one planned anything, Adam. Your wife told your father to get out and never come back. We simply chose not to stay where someone we care about was treated that way. Adam's face flushed. She was stressed. It was a misunderstanding. You could not just pull me aside later, Dad? You had to make a statement and ruin our reception? I kept my voice calm. Despite the pain his accusation caused, I tried to pull you aside, son, several times throughout the day. Each time, Jessica intervened, and when I finally expressed my concern about the changes I have seen in you this past year, her response was to publicly humiliate me and demand I leave. That is not how it happened, Adam insisted, though doubt flickered in his eyes. Coach Patterson spoke up. Adam, I have known you since you were 12 years old. You were a boy who stood up for what was right, even when it was difficult. I watched you defend smaller kids against bullies, speak truth even when it cost you popularity. What happened to that young man? Adam's composure wavered. You do not understand the pressure, the expectations. Jessica's family has connections that can secure our future. Sometimes that means making compromises. Compromises, yes, Professor Williams interjected gently, but not surrendering your entire identity, your passions, your relationships with people who have loved you your entire life. Adam's anger seemed to deflate, replaced by confusion and the first hints of recognition. He sank onto the couch, running his hands through his disheveled hair. Everything is such a mess. Jessica has barely stopped crying. She says I did not defend her against all of you judging our lifestyle. No one here has judged your lifestyle, Adam, I said, sitting beside him. We have been concerned about watching you disconnect from everything and everyone that made you who you are, about seeing you abandon work you were passionate about watching you stand silent while Jessica dictated who deserved to be part of your life. Adam looked up, a new vulnerability in his expression. Did you know she gave me an ultimatum last week? After the honeymoon, I need to cut ties with you, Dad. She says you are holding me back, that your blue-collar values are incompatible with our future social position. The room fell silent at this revelation. I felt a cold wave of shock, despite having suspected something similar was coming. To hear it stated so baldly, however, confirmed the true nature of what we were dealing with. And what did you say to that? I asked quietly. Adam's eyes filled with tears, the first genuine emotion I had seen from him in months. I told her I would think about it. What kind of son does that make me? That I would even consider it for a moment. It makes you human, son. Someone who got caught up in a relationship that became controlling so gradually, you did not see it happening. The question now is, what you will do with this awareness. He stood abruptly, conflict evident in every line of his body. I need to go. Jessica is waiting at the hotel. We have a flight to catch this afternoon. Of course, I said, not pushing further. Adam needed space to process everything that had happened. Whatever decisions he made next needed to be his own. As he moved toward the door, he paused, looking back at the gathered faces watching him with concern and love. The people I once never imagined my life without, now strangers watching me implode. His voice broke slightly. I do not know how to fix this. Thomas stepped forward, clasping Adam's shoulder. You start by remembering who you really are, man. The rest follows from there. Adam nodded once, then left without further comment. As the door closed behind him, I felt the weight of uncertainty about our future relationship, but also a fragile hope that perhaps the events of the wedding day had created a crack in the facade Jessica had constructed around my son. Later that morning, as my remaining guests departed with hugs and promises to stay in touch, Thomas lingered behind, helping me clean up. Do you think he will come around? He asked, as we washed dishes side by side. I considered the question carefully. I honestly do not know, Thomas. But for the first time in months, I saw a glimpse of the real Adam in there, and that gives me hope. Hope was all I had as I watched my son drive away to his honeymoon, caught between the life Jessica had designed for him and the authentic connections he had left behind. 23 days after the wedding, I was weeding my vegetable garden when a familiar car pulled into the driveway. I straightened slowly, my back protesting after an hour bent over the tomato plants, and watched as Adam emerged from his vehicle. He looked different somehow, thinner perhaps, with dark circles under his eyes suggesting sleepless nights. For a moment, he simply stood by his car, as if uncertain of his welcome. Then he walked toward me with purpose, stopping a few feet away. "Can we talk, Dad?" he asked, his voice carrying a weight I had not heard before. "Of course, son. Come inside. I will make us some coffee." In the kitchen, we moved in the familiar dance of two people who had shared this space for years. Adam automatically reached for mugs while I measured coffee grounds. The comfortable routine eased some of the tension between us as we settled at the table, steaming cups before us. Adam stared into his coffee, gathering his thoughts. I noticed he was not wearing his wedding ring. "Jessica and I are getting an annulment," he finally said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of this statement. I kept my expression neutral, not wanting to reveal my internal relief. "What happened?" He looked up then, meeting my eyes directly for the first time since entering the house. "Reality happened, Dad. Or maybe I should say, reality reasserted itself after a long period of delusion on my part." Adam took a deep breath and continued. "The honeymoon was a disaster from the start. Jessica was obsessed with posting the perfect photos for social media, staging elaborate setups that took hours each day. When I suggested we actually experience our destination rather than just photograph it, she accused me of not supporting her influencer aspirations." He paused, rotating his mug slowly. "But that was just the surface problem. Once we were away from the wedding chaos and alone together, all I could think about was what happened at the reception, the way she spoke to you, the realization that every person who had been a meaningful part of my life had walked out. I kept seeing their faces, your face, as you all left." I remained silent, allowing him space to continue his story without interruption. "I started questioning everything, Dad. Why had I let Jessica isolate me from people I cared about? Why had I abandoned work I was passionate about? Why had I stood silent while she disrespected you?" The questions kept coming, and I could not push them away anymore. "And how did Jessica respond to these questions?" I asked gently. Adam's laugh held no humor. "Not well. She accused me of being ungrateful for all she and her family had done for me. Said I was throwing away our chance at a perfect life. When I mentioned returning to my previous job at the sustainable energy startup, she called me a naive idealist who would never amount to anything without her father's connections. That must have been difficult to hear," I offered. "Actually, it was clarifying." His expression softened slightly. "It reminded me of something you always used to tell me after Mom died, that the people who truly love you want you to become more yourself, not less." I remembered those conversations well, late-night talks with a grieving boy trying to make sense of a world without his mother. I nodded, throat tight with emotion. The breaking point came when I directly asked Jessica about the ultimatum she had given me about cutting ties with you, Adam continued. She did not deny it. Instead, she doubled down, saying her father had business associates whose children never spoke to their lower-status parents, that it was sometimes necessary to prune family trees to allow for proper growth. Adam's eyes flashed with a familiar determination I had not seen in over a year. That is when I knew it was over. I told her I was not interested in a marriage that required me to abandon the father who had sacrificed everything for me, that I would not become someone who valued status over genuine relationships. "What did she say?" I asked, already guessing the answer. "She said I was making the biggest mistake of my life, that I would regret choosing loyalty to my past over a successful future." Adam shook his head, as if those two things must be mutually exclusive, as if success that requires abandoning your core values and relationships is success at all. We sat in silence for a moment, the implications of his decision settling around us. Finally, I spoke the question that concerned me most. Are you okay, son? A tired smile crossed his face. Not yet, but I think I will be. The annulment process is underway. Jessica's parents are furious about the embarrassment to their social standing. But my lawyer thinks we have solid grounds given the brief duration of the marriage and Jessica's misrepresentation of her expectations. What about your job at her father's company? Already resigned. Adam straightened, a spark of his old enthusiasm returning. Actually, I called my former boss at the startup yesterday. They are working on a major sustainable housing project and need someone with my background. The pay is less than what I was making at the hotel corporation, but the work matters. It will make a real difference in people's lives. Pride swelled in my chest at the glimpse of my son re-emerging from beneath the facade Jessica had created. You have always been happiest when your work aligned with your values. Adam nodded, then reached across the table to grasp my hand, an unexpected gesture that took me back to his childhood. I am so sorry, Dad, for everything, for how I let Jessica treat you, for not standing up when it mattered, for almost throwing away the most important relationship in my life for someone who never really saw me at all. The simple sincerity of his apology touched me deeply. I squeezed his hand in return. We all get lost sometimes, son. The important thing is finding your way back. Over the following months, Adam worked diligently to rebuild the connections he had allowed to wither under Jessica's influence. He called Thomas and gradually restored their friendship through honest conversations and shared activities. He sought out Professor Williams and Coach Patterson, acknowledging his mistakes and demonstrating through actions that he valued their presence in his life. The legal aftermath of ending his brief marriage was unpleasant but necessary. Jessica's family attempted to create problems for Adam professionally, but his new employers stood firmly behind him, impressed by his integrity and renewed commitment to meaningful work. 6 months after that day in my kitchen, Adam and I were grilling steaks in the backyard, a Sunday tradition we had reinstated with religious regularity. As the meat sizzled and the evening air carried the scent of charcoal and marinating vegetables, Adam looked over at me with thoughtful eyes. You know what I realized recently, Dad? He said, flipping a steak with practiced precision. What is that? That day at the wedding, when you said you would take others with you. You were not being vindictive or trying to create drama. You were simply standing up for what was right, with dignity and without apology. His voice held new maturity as he continued. It took incredible courage to walk away like that, knowing it might permanently damage your relationship with me. But you did it anyway, because some principles are worth standing for, even at great personal cost. I considered his words, remembering the complex emotions of that day. I just hoped that someday you would remember who you really are, son. The man your mother and I raised you to be. Adam nodded, understanding the deeper meaning in my words. A comfortable silence fell between us, broken only by the sizzle of meat on the grill and distant neighborhood sounds. Later that evening, as we finished our meal on the patio, Adam mentioned casually that he had been seeing someone new, a fellow engineer from the Sustainable Housing Project, named Laura. We are taking things slowly, he explained. She's brilliant, kind, passionate about her work. He smiled, adding the detail that mattered most to me. She asked if she could meet you soon. Said any father who raised a son with such strong values must be worth knowing. I would like that very much, I replied, heart lifting at this simple evidence of a healthier relationship forming in my son's life. As the summer progressed, I observed Adam returning to himself, his genuine laughter becoming more frequent, his passion for meaningful work rekindled. When he eventually brought Laura to dinner, I was struck by the natural, respectful way they interacted, supporting each other's thoughts and gently disagreeing when perspectives differed. There was none of the controlling dynamic that had characterized his relationship with Jessica, just two strong individuals choosing to build something meaningful together. One evening, nearly a year after the wedding disaster, Adam and I sat on the front porch swing, watching fireflies illuminate the gathering dusk. He had just shared news of a major breakthrough in his sustainable housing project that could bring affordable, eco-friendly homes to thousands of families. You know what I learned from everything that happened with Jessica, Dad, he said, the swing creaking gently beneath us. What is that, son? True love never requires you to become smaller, to disconnect from community, or to abandon your core values. Real love expands your world, rather than contracting it. It took nearly losing everyone who really cared about me to understand the difference. His words resonated with wisdom hard-won through painful experience. I thought of Maria, gone now for so many years, and how our love had always pushed us to become better versions of ourselves, never diminished by the other's presence. As darkness settled around us, I reflected on the journey we had traveled together. From the devastating loss of Maria, through the challenges of single parenthood, to this moment of renewed connection. There had been missteps and painful separations, but the authentic bond between us had ultimately prevailed. What would you say to others who might be in similar situations? I asked, thinking of how this experience might help someone else recognize a controlling relationship before it caused such damage. Adam considered the question thoughtfully. I would tell them to pay attention when someone tries to isolate them from people who have loved them consistently, to be wary of anyone who requires them to change fundamental aspects of their identity to be worthy of love, and to remember that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from something that looks perfect on the outside but is destroying you on the inside. Simple wisdom, but profound in its truth. Have you ever thought about how many lives were changed by your decision to walk out that day, Dad? Adam asked. Not just mine, but perhaps others at the wedding who witnessed what real integrity looks like. I had not considered this broader impact, having been focused primarily on my relationship with my son. But Adam's question made me wonder how many quiet ripples our actions create in the world, touching lives in ways we may never fully know. As we sat together in companionable silence, I felt profound gratitude for second chances and the resilience of genuine relationships. Life offers no guarantees, no perfect paths without missteps or pain, but it does provide opportunities for redemption, for returning to our authentic selves when we have strayed too far from who we truly are. What do you think about standing up for those you love, even when it might cost you the relationship? Is it better to speak difficult truths, or to keep quiet to maintain peace? How do you recognize when a relationship is becoming controlling rather than supportive? If you have ever had to make a difficult choice between standing for your principles or keeping the peace, share your experience in the comments below. Do not forget to like and subscribe for more real-life stories about family, relationships, and the courage to be authentic. Thank you for listening. And remember that true love always expands your world rather than limiting it.